The 2020 Pentagon UAP reports validate military encounters with unidentified aerial phenomena. Scientific studies on consciousness and reality perception support some theoretical frameworks. Chemtrail theories lack scientific consensus, with atmospheric scientists explaining contrails as water vapor condensation. Project Blue Beam appears to originate solely from Sir Germanist's 1990s writings without corroborating evidence, now presenting the complete documentary. Topper TH the H the C Conspiracy. Theory of Everything in 2020, a documentary was launched that faced immediate and consistent bans across social media platforms. The film, titled The Conspiracy Theory of Everything, vanished from feeds within hours of publication, removed by algorithms and content moderators with mechanical precision. For years, this pattern continued: upload, ban, repeat. Mark Zuckerberg's 2024 appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience revealed why. During the interview, Zuckerberg confirmed that in 2020, the Biden administration had pressured major tech companies to actively censor specific content. With political shifts in Washington, these restrictions began lifting. This documentary represents an attempt to republish that banned material in expanded form. What follows is not presented as absolute truth, but as an exploration of ideas that mainstream discourse has consistently rejected. These are hypotheses, theories, and connections that challenge conventional understanding of reality itself. The goal is not to provide definitive answers, but to encourage deeper questioning of the world around us. The human collective consciousness exists in chaos today. Despite unprecedented access to information through the internet, most people see only fragments of reality. Search algorithms on Google, Facebook, YouTube, and other platforms create personalized information bubbles. Unless actively seeking alternative perspectives, users receive content matching their existing beliefs and behaviors. This algorithmic curation creates a fundamental problem. People become trapped in confirmation loops, seeing only what aligns with their established worldview. Ideas labeled as conspiracy theories face immediate ridicule, causing most to dismiss them without investigation. The comfort of conformity outweighs the discomfort of challenging deeply held beliefs. This self-imposed limitation creates a barrier to understanding the bigger picture. Most people remain unaware of connections between seemingly separate events, policies, and power structures. They exist within carefully constructed paradigms that shape their perception of reality itself. The ancient Greeks and Gnostic traditions described a force called the demiurge, a consciousness responsible for creating the physical universe, but not the supreme creative force behind all existence. This entity imposed itself over true reality, creating a false world that masked living beings from supreme truth. The Matrix trilogy provides an excellent modern metaphor. In the films, humans believe their world is authentic while actually plugged into an artificial reality. They suffer while providing energy to ruling overlords, artificial intelligences that benefit from their imprisonment. The demiurge operates similarly. It represents the force behind physical reality, but while connected to that reality, consciousness remains enslaved to incomplete truth. Physical reality becomes a prison that prevents connection with higher dimensions of existence. Different Gnostic schools viewed the demiurge as either malevolent, deliberately deceiving humanity, or simply ignorant of its place in creation. Either way, the result remained the same. Humans became lost in illusion, mistaking limited physical experience for complete reality. Ancient mystery schools sought liberation from this illusion through spiritual practices. Meditation, plant medicine ceremonies, and various disciplines aimed to connect practitioners with higher realms. The goal was awakening the divine spark within, what Gnostics called Sophia, meaning wisdom, to return to higher dimensions of existence. Modern science has begun exploring similar concepts through different language. The holographic universe theory suggests reality operates like a movie projection. We experience events linearly, frame by frame, following apparent laws of physics. But quantum mechanics reveals a deeper level where particles behave non-linearly, suggesting retrocausality and simultaneous existence across time. Computer systems provide another useful analogy. Screen displays show user-friendly interfaces while complex machine code operates underneath. Binary ones and zeros create digital experiences, but users never see this foundational layer. Similarly, quantum information might underlie our macro reality, operating by entirely different rules than everyday experience suggests. This raises profound questions about the nature of existence itself. Could our entire reality be a simulation? Some curious video clips have emerged showing apparent glitches in the Matrix, a bird suspended motionless in midair before flying away, or news footage from Russia showing a person levitating before dropping and running when noticed by camera operators. While these clips lack verification, they compel curiosity about reality's true nature. Current physics models remain incomplete. We cannot properly integrate gravity into the standard model, and quantum mechanics defies classical understanding. Perhaps unlocking these mysteries will fundamentally change human existence. The lesson of the demiurge centers on recognizing the illusion of reality. Everything perceived through physical senses represents limited experience of universal totality. As long as we believe only in material existence, we remain incomplete, perpetuating the false reality's existence. Only by embracing the unknown and asking deeper questions can we break free from binding limitations. The Emerald Tablets describe the human soul as light trapped in the veil of night, a metaphor for consciousness disconnected from supreme oneness, trapped in illusions and unilluminated understanding. The unilluminated mind actively creates the reality it perceives as real. Humanity lives in darkness, veiled by personal beliefs and disconnected from higher truth. This principle appears in Marvel's Doctor Strange, when Stephen initially denies anything beyond material reality before experiencing multidimensional existence and learning that thoughts actively shape reality fields. As we become complacent in creating our lives, we surrender control to external forces. Carl Jung called this the collective unconscious, the mass mind field where everyone's thoughts and feelings influence individual decisions through concentrated energetic weight. Media, news, advertisements, family opinions, and internet content all process through our egos, shaping identity as we disconnect from authentic being. The quest for wisdom represents a continuous journey into unknown territory. True illumination requires understanding that we actively create our life experiences, not simply following preconceived patterns. Breaking free from demiurgic limitations requires believing such freedom as possible, opening ourselves to greater truth beyond the illusion. But humanity largely ignores these messages, and there are specific reasons why. The darkness beneath deep within human consciousness runs a sickness, a putrid evil pervading modern society's underbelly, rarely seen or discussed publicly, but representing the ultimate source of collective misery and suffering. This evil masks itself with surface appearances, suggesting everything is fine, life is good, and everyone is having fun. However, this illusion proves as false as the demiurge itself. This darkness manifests on multiple levels, with one of its most horrific expressions being sexual energy manipulation and pedophilia. Jeffrey Epstein was merely the first public domino, a twisted figure organizing a massive sex trafficking ring involving women and girls, often underage, forcing them into sexual slavery not just for himself but for high-profile individuals. Prince Andrew of the British royal family faced accusations from Virginia Roberts, who claimed Epstein forced her to have sex with the prince on at least 3 occasions. Overwhelming evidence suggests Andrew's guilt, particularly his disastrous BBC interview attempting to address these allegations. During the interview, Andrew claimed his final meeting with Epstein was purely to cut contact, then proceeded to stay at Epstein's residence for 3 days while young women were repeatedly observed entering and leaving the property. When questioned about this 3-day stay, he claimed it was merely a convenient location, despite witnesses reporting seeing him receive a foot massage from a young woman inside the house. Bill Clinton visited Epstein's island at least 20 times, Hillary Clinton at least 6 times, along with numerous other high-profile individuals. This raises crucial questions about the scope and depth of these networks. If Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, was heavily involved with Epstein, who else might be connected to this pedophile network? The conspiracy theories extend to suggesting that ruling elites sustain themselves on the energy of innocence through horrific sexual manipulation. While such ideas may seem dismissible, certain anomalies emerge when investigating this material, particularly around Hillary Clinton and a laptop previously owned by former U.S. politician Anthony Weiner. On November 4, 2016, Eric Prince appeared on Breitbart Radio outlining discoveries on the Weiner laptop that were being blocked by Attorney General Lynch. He reported finding damning criminal information, including money laundering evidence and Hillary's visits to Epstein's Island. Sidney Powell called out the FB1 at Hillsdale College, claiming there was substantial material for prosecution and that police officers initially investigating the laptop had to leave to vomit after seeing certain content. Shortly after, the NYPD chief directly involved in the Weiner laptop case allegedly killed himself. The official story claims Epstein also killed himself, though investigations question whether his death was suicide or silencing before he could implicate high-level individuals. Conspiracy theories suggest certain code words in Hillary's emails referred to children for mysterious events, with the conspiracy extending to non-human control sources of reptilian nature. Whether these reptilians are physical shapeshifters, non-physical entities controlling minds, or scapegoats for something else entirely remains unclear. The movie They Live illustrated this concept well, showing alien beings using radio tower signals to mask their appearance while living among humans and enslaving mass consciousness. The ones pulling strings today are generally called the deep state, the manipulative group controlling human consciousness through nefarious means. But beyond identifying puppet masters, how exactly do world elites control human consciousness? Coordinates, mechanisms of control, fear, and scarcity represent the highest level of control. This creates a two-way street binding elite influence with public compliance. Fear spreads like a virus when we live from scarcity, making populations easier to control through emotional manipulation. Our food supply has been systematically corrupted. Most modern food is toxic, designed to subdue creative energy while creating addictions to unhealthy substances. Processed foods rich in salt, sugar, and fat, plus produced chemically engineered or sprayed with pesticides and herbicides, dominate consumption. Monsanto exemplifies this control, having patented seeds and GMO production while disallowing ancient seed-saving practices. They've effectively controlled food supply while masking it as feeding the world. The truth about modern food production reveals deliberate nutritional degradation designed to keep populations subdued and dependent. Water fluoridation represents another control mechanism. Some call fluoride the metaphorical tears of the New World Order, their most widely used weapon. Governments add fluoride to water supplies claiming dental health benefits, but evidence suggests more sinister purposes. The fluoride conspiracy centers on pineal gland calcification. The pineal gland, linked to consciousness and the third eye by various spiritual traditions, becomes calcified by fluoride exposure. French philosopher Descartes argued that interaction between non-local consciousness and the physical world occurred through this gland. Water fluoridation began with suspicious origins involving aluminum production company Alcoa, which had toxic fluoride waste from aluminum production. After a single biochemist sponsored by Alcoa showed fluoride-affected rat cavities in 1939, public water fluoridation proposals emerged not from doctors but from industry scientists. Chemist Charles Perkins wrote in The Truth About Water Fluoridation that repeated small fluoride doses reduce individual resistance to domination by slowly poisoning brain areas, making people submissive to governing authorities. While Nazi and Soviet use remains unconfirmed, fluoride's threat isn't theoretical. Jennifer Luke's 1990s research showed that by old age, pineal glands contain the same fluoride amounts as teeth, having been calcified through accumulated exposure. The National Research Council's 2006 Fluoride Toxicity Review reported decreased melatonin production and other negative pineal function effects. Harvard studies and China's Shanghai Health Institute linked fluoride to reduced childhood IQ and potential brain toxicity. Research also connected fluoride to certain cancers and male reproductive system destruction in rabbits. The benefit to risk ratio remains unclear due to insufficient evidence, yet most people don't even know they're consuming it. Professor Stephen Peckham, director of the Center for Health Services at the University of Kent, has faced research rejection from dental health journals and accusations of statistics, manipulation for studies linking fluoride to hypothyroidism. Someone clearly doesn't want this information reaching the public. Entertainment industry manipulation extends beyond subliminal messaging in children's content like Disney movies and SpongeBob. The industry regularly hires young children, transforms them into celebrities, profits from them, and drives them to mental breakdown. The K-pop industry's slave contracts force young singers into decades of servitude with endless work hours, leading to stage collapses from exhaustion. This connects to pedophilia networks with celebrities including Brad Pitt, Elijah Wood, Evan Rachel Wood, and Corey Feldman speaking out about Hollywood's pedophilia problem. News media perpetuates narratives that things are bad and getting worse. Consistent toxic themes dominate coverage because negative news generates more attention than positive stories. People consuming this negativity begin believing and perpetuating it, creating self-fulfilling prophecies. When constantly viewing the world negatively, people lose connection with inner light, seeing only darkness, shadows, and frightening imagery. Humanity falls deeper into self-created delusion. Local news across networks is written and controlled by unified sources regardless of apparent network differences. Edward Snowden deserves recognition for revealing mass surveillance capabilities. The NSA and UK government secret service can spy on literally everyone, tracking metadata and monitoring locations and activities. Programs like PRISM allow court-approved direct access to Americans' Google and Yahoo accounts. Tempora, a British Black Ops surveillance program run by GCHQ, includes call databases, text messages, and secret court orders requiring Verizon to provide millions of Americans' phone records daily. Snowden explained that using the X-Keyscore program, he could wiretap anyone from accountants to federal judges to the president if he had their personal email. The NSA's top-secret black budget exposed successes and failures of 16 spy agencies comprising the U.S. intelligence community. It revealed the NSA paying private tech companies for clandestine communications network access, harvesting millions of emails and instant messaging contact lists, searching email content, tracking cell phone locations, undermining encryption via Bull Run, and using cookies to piggyback on internet advertising tools for government hacking. Despite these revelations, the information mysteriously disappeared from mainstream discussion. Personal responsibility. We bear responsibility ourselves. While pointing fingers at ruling elites is easy and justice must be served, we must recognize our role in perpetuating problems through beliefs, mentality, lack of mindfulness, and unwillingness to strive for wisdom. Bruce Lipton's groundbreaking epigenetics work demonstrates that beliefs affect biological systems profoundly. If we believe we can live happily, we can. If we believe it's impossible, we shut ourselves off from experiencing satisfaction. People often try convincing friends to adopt their belief systems to validate their own opinions and perspectives. We deal with a mass consciousness field pushing beliefs onto everyone else while truth becomes muddled and lost. This unconsciousness keeps us small, and we do it to ourselves. Collective mindset often lacks interest in learning, wisdom, or connecting with truth, compelling outrageous levels of stupidity. Humans regularly do incredibly dumb things, now captured on camera and shared widely. At every level, from top to bottom, there's clearly a problem. Many remain disconnected from their souls, living as self-centered, materialistic, pleasure-seeking beings who don't perceive or care about searching for anything greater. The soul represents the voice of truth, love, and compassion within, the most authentic, highest version of ourselves. It's the eye of awareness within the heart connecting us to everything, seeing and knowing all things are connected. Masses disconnected from souls don't even believe souls exist. These ideas face ridicule and demeaning by masses, further perpetuating soulless human consciousness running rampant, ego bodies operating like chickens with heads cut off. This makes it easy for elites to control collective minds using methods explored, because we're not operating from higher collective consciousness but as disconnected individuals. Yet glimpses of soul through lucid dreams, near-death experiences, psychedelic experiences, or personal transformational revelations usually change individuals forever. Once you experience being part of something greater and recognize that thoughts, feelings, and actions directly impact the world around you, returning to ignorance becomes nearly impossible. Solving this problem requires action from both ends. Those perpetuating crimes against humanity, mass manipulation, pedophiles, rapists, murderers must face justice. But if we think this solves everything, we're mistaken. If we remain asleep and complacent, removing one leader just allows another to take their place, continuing the cycle forever. The other half requires personal evolution, healing soul connections, and becoming examples of virtuous, soulful, compassionate living. This aligns with technological evolution and introduction of new technologies that will forever shape the future. CapUHTH Terrestrial. Question. The subject of extraterrestrials has mystified humanity for generations. The question, are we alone in the universe, has inspired species advancement in searching for life beyond Earth. Yet based on general public treatment of the subject, it appears we have yet to make substantial contact. However, awareness of deeper hidden truths regularly leaks to the public. UFOs, unidentified flying objects, now called UAPs, unidentified aerial vehicles, gained prominence shortly after atomic bombs detonated during World War II. UFO sightings spiked worldwide in the following decade, with the 1947 Roswell, New Mexico incident marking a crucial turning point. Reports of a UFO crash in flying disc shape inspired tremendous interest in possible alien activity. The U.S. military quickly quarantined and cleaned the site, claiming it was simply a weather balloon. This began the modern UFO phenomenon. Today, cell phone technology provides access to thousands of seemingly unexplainable UFO sightings worldwide. One notable example is the 2011 Dome of the Rock incident in Jerusalem, where multiple independent sources captured footage of a bright, glowing, oscillating orb descending over the sacred temple. After hovering momentarily, it shot upward with tremendous speed and disappeared. More recently, Pentagon released videos feature 3 separate accounts of U.S. military pilots attempting to track incredibly fast-moving aerial objects without identifying them. Curious phenomena accompany these sightings. A long list of ex-military officials claim to have seen or interacted with these craft, identifying them as real but unexplainable. Robert Dean, a retired command sergeant major who became a ufologist before his 2018 death, publicly shared experiences with UFOs and ETs, including presentations about what allegedly happened during the real moon landing. According to Dean, while many believed the moon landing was faked due to inconsistencies like camera crosshairs appearing behind objects or strange reflections in astronaut visors, there was actually a real moon landing. Upon arriving, astronauts supposedly discovered the moon was populated with alien beings and flying ships. This shocked astronauts so much that after returning with 40 rolls of film documenting what they saw, NASA allegedly destroyed the evidence. The thinking seems to be that revealing this truth would cause such global paradigm disruption that NASA buried it to prevent worldwide chaos. Bob Lazar represents one of the first to come forward with inside leaks about secret government UFO programs. He claimed being hired in the late 1980s to reverse engineer purported extraterrestrial technology at a secret site called S4, similar to and close to Area 51. Lazar described having access to a recovered UFO ship and spending years attempting to discover how it worked. He claimed the vehicle's propulsion was fueled by element 115 moscovium, or E115, which at the time was called ununpentium since it hadn't been created yet. Element 115 was first synthesized in 2003 by joint Russian and American scientists. He said the propulsion system relied on a stable E115 isotope generating gravity waves after being excited by livermorium element 116 during proton bombardment. Decay products from the reaction between these elements would include gravitons, hypothetical quantum particles thought responsible for gravity. Using a bowling ball on fabric analogy, Lazar explained that the craft would fall through space by distorting space-time around it in continuous rolling motion. This allowed silent flight and visual detection evasion by bending light around the vehicle. When activated, the gravitational field was so strong that hands couldn't touch the craft. According to intelligence received at S4, the ship, one of 9 the military possessed, originated from the Zeta Reticuli binary star system and belonged to the Greys, the most common alien visual representation today. Military secrecy prevented different divisions studying the craft from communicating with each other, slowing reverse engineering progress. One group worked on controls, another on propulsion, another on different aspects, but isolation prevented understanding how parts interconnected and worked together. This was especially challenging because the ship seemed entirely interconnected without moving parts. One singular solid object where seat, floor, panels, and walls were all one material with no sharp edges anywhere, representing an entirely different kind of machine than anything we're used to. After Lazar went public, his life fell apart. People investigated his background and found he seemingly never had claimed education degrees. However, deeper investigation revealed documents stored at his old university proved he was telling the truth. Bob explained that after going public, he received a phone call from ex-employers asking, "Do you have any idea what we're going to do to you now that you've done this?" For years, much of his past was erased and he was made to look like a fool. Dr. Grady, I win, and it's what Stephen Greer founded the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, CSETI, in 1990 to create diplomatic and research-based initiatives for contacting extraterrestrial civilizations, along with the Disclosure Project in 1993 to disclose government and military information regarding UFOs and ETs. The organization claims over 30 confirmed UFO sightings by pilots and over 40 proofs of landing traces, electromagnetic signatures left by UFOs landing on Earth. Combined with Lazar's claims, these ships could bend light, remaining invisible to us, though perhaps not to high-level military scanners. Dr. Com. Greer appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience explaining that according to over 30 documents from the NRO, NSA, CIA, FBI, and presidential briefings, these ships work and ETs understand the universe leagues beyond our own capabilities. While we believe light is the fastest thing in the universe, this represents only a barrier. Beyond light speed are laws governed by superconsciousness, enabling interdimensional travel and nearly instantaneous universal movement without worrying about light speed, which is too slow for solar system to solar system or galactic travel. This relates to consciousness and conscious thought actively steering reality fields that create experiences. The significance of alien life to us isn't really about ETs at all, but about technology. The instant it became available would completely transform Earth life forever. Imagine suddenly traveling to distant planets, exploring the universe, and having enough power to fuel entire world energy requirements forever, enough power to destroy planets if desired. This has tremendous implications and may partly explain keeping the technology hidden. The question arises, is this technology hidden so only secret world rulers can have it, or because humanity isn't yet ready to inherit such a gift? One final piece in the ET and UFO conspiracy is the concept of the hoaxed alien attack. This comes from the late Dr. Kare. Wernher von Braun, the top Nazi scientist of Hitler's army who came to the United States after World War II to work for the U.S. government. On his deathbed, von Braun theorized that after a war with the Middle East, there would one day be a hoaxed alien attack as part of a secret plan to weaponize space and control the world. He urged Dr. Carol Rosen, his secretary, to thwart this plan above all else, because if space was weaponized, whoever controlled these powers would have complete supreme control over everyone, and the world would fall under complete oppressor control. Siege, the reptilian theory. The subject of ETs doesn't end with traditional alien encounters. The reptilian conspiracy, most famously brought to public attention by British conspiracy theorist David Icke, has become one of the most infamous and popular conspiracy theories ever, sparking numerous parodies and commentaries in media and TV shows. Aqua believes that an interdimensional race of reptilian entities known as Archons have hijacked Earth and are preventing humanity from realizing our true potential. He argues that these archons are the same beings mentioned in many Gnostic texts that identified themselves as demons and rulers of 7 planets in various traditions, ultimately aiming to prevent souls from leaving the material realm. He claims these beings have gone by many names throughout history, including the Anunnaki from Sumerian myth and the Watchers and Nephilim from the Book of Enoch. Human sacrifice to gods in the ancient world was actually for reptilian benefit, especially child sacrifice, because at the moment of death by sacrifice, a form of adrenaline surges through the body, accumulating at the brain base and apparently being more potent in children, something reminiscent of modern adrenochrome theories. Bringing it to modern day, Ike claims a genetically modified human archon hybrid race of shape-shifting reptilians known as the Babylonian Brotherhood, Illuminati, or Freemasons manipulate global events to keep humans in constant fear so archons can feed off negative energy created. He states these reptilians come not only from another planet but another dimension, the lower level of fourth dimension, which he calls the astral plane nearest to the physical world. As of 2003, when his books brought this theory out, he said reptilian bloodlines include all American presidents, 3 British and 2 Canadian prime ministers, several Sumerian kings and Egyptian pharaohs, and numerous celebrities. The most prominent bloodlines reportedly include the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, various wealthy European families, established families of the eastern United States, and the British royal family. He said in numerous interviews that he saw former British Prime Minister Ted Heath's eyes turn entirely jet black while waiting for a Sky News interview in 1989. Ultimately, the global elite make up the pyramid top for reptilians in modern day, all intending to keep us sedated and trapped in this reality without gaining higher knowledge. At the elite top are what Ike refers to as prison wardens, who oversee us in what is to them just a prison world. Along with the New World Order, their main goal is apparently creating a microchip population, one world government, and global Orwellian fascist state, a brave new world post-truth era where freedom of speech is denied. If Ike is to be believed, the Brotherhood either created or controls the United Nations, International Monetary Fund, Round Table, Council on Foreign Relations, Chatham House, Club of Rome, Royal Institute of International Affairs, Trilateral Commission, and Bilderberg Group, as well as media, military, CIA, MI6, Mossad, scientific publications, most religious doctrine, and even the internet. In other words, they control every aspect of society and can make us believe what they want when they want. Before moving on, it's important to revisit Bob Dean and a particularly interesting story he shared during the 2009 European Exopolitics Summit. He described attending his son's retirement ceremony from the U.S. Navy in Washington, D.C., where numerous active and retired generals, admirals, captains, and more were present. A particular retired Navy scientist approached him saying, "Hey, I know you. You're that retired command sergeant major who has opened up about UFOs. I have a story for you. My last government job was as a plasma fusion physicist at a top secret place outside Las Vegas, and I was working there for 5 years with 2 guys who were not from here. They were from somewhere else. Delightful people, supporting us in figuring out plasma fusion, which equates to infinite energy forever." The man said after a few years of working with these guys, he approached one and asked, "Okay, what do you really think of us humans as a species?" The alien said, "Well, since you've asked, we think you are a primitive, savage, and dangerous race." The other alien listening in then leaned in and said, "And you also smell bad." He explained, "It's not really about our bodies, although yes, we have polluted our bodies and Earth to a wild extent, but that we also have a psychic odor about us. Our thoughts and feelings are so negative that other higher species find it terribly offensive." While this story is funny, it's also something we should take seriously. According to reports and expressions from many whistleblowers, other species interacting with us are mostly benevolent. If we can really listen to what they have to say and do meaningful self-reflection, it may help us clear out our own negativity, release ourselves from any reptilian or other controlling influences, and put us in position to meet some really cool otherworldly species. The digital manipulation, know your customer, has become the de facto business mantra of our modern era. Collect enough information on everyone's web browsing and social media habits, listen to what they talk about when they believe they're alone, and feed the data into computer networks so complex that computer scientists aren't even sure how they work anymore. These complex neural networks of computers, data, and programs link to nearly all of us through apps and web services used daily, spitting out products, content, and suggestions catered to individual desires better than anything ever done before. They keep masses glued and engaged on phones, tablets, and desktops, specifically designed to manipulate thoughts and feelings to keep us using apps longer, get friends and family engaging, and spend more money. This is our current reality, and the business model is wildly successful. Most people don't even know they're part of it. As technology continues advancing and humans become more integrated with it, the line blurs between what is real and what is not. Then again, if all reality is illusion anyway, does it even matter? Deepfake technology has reached the point where we can produce videos of just about anyone saying or doing things they otherwise wouldn't say. While this technology is still in its infancy and current clips can be identified as fake, daily improvements make it increasingly difficult to tell the difference between deepfake and reality. It's already being used nefariously, including making porn videos of celebrities by taking their faces and applying them to other bodies. As time goes on, we may exist in a world where countless videos of famous people and politicians exist across the internet saying things they would never otherwise say. When it gets so good that nobody can tell the difference, real and fake versions will argue over which one is authentic. But this is only the beginning of technological conspiracies, and how we slowly lose touch with our world as we enter new ones. One of the biggest growing concerns worldwide is the belief that powers that be are attempting to control everyone through advanced microchip technology. While mobile devices already track and monitor us, microchips could be used to monitor and potentially manipulate thoughts and emotions on a mass level, just like Facebook and Google are already doing today. The powers that be wouldn't just be watching you on the outside, they'd be able to monitor everything inside, everything about you down to what you think. This technology, combined with AI that can associate complex combinations of states within your physiology, predicting future behaviors and affecting perception and decision-making processes, creates a scary possible reality, one where we integrate with technology. This is already happening on some level right now, with algorithms actively recording everything you search and serving it back to you on a silver platter. However, this would be far more invasive integration. What's even crazier is that people would do it voluntarily. Very few people will allow technology to be embedded in their bodies just so government can monitor them. Rather, just like with cell phones today, microchips will be no-brainers for people willing to receive benefits in exchange for intimate access to personal information, everything you see, think, feel, touch, taste, and so on. What kind of benefits would there be? At the earliest level, which Elon Musk has already announced with Neuralink, connecting tiny wires directly into your brain could theoretically overwrite neural patterns of depression and anxiety and even help heal spinal problems. In the grand scheme with innovation, this technology seems to go into the realm of having a telepathic link to the internet. When you have a question, instead of pulling out your phone and searching for answers, you can access all information instantaneously about anything you want. For others with the implant, you may find yourself connecting to others in a pseudo-telepathic way, where thoughts and feelings could be personally shared with others in real time, communicating beyond words but with a language of images, pictures, and even sharing experiences. This would allow connecting with others both mentally and empathically, which could bring people closer together. This would fundamentally change the education system too. Who needs school when you have instant access to every bit of information known to mankind right in your mind? This chip could theoretically support downloading information thousands, if not millions of times faster than reading or watching documentaries, much like Neo in The Matrix downloading lifetime worth of fighting techniques and becoming a kung fu master in a single day. If you wanted to become an amazing artist, or learn everything about programming, quantum mechanics, or becoming a professional accountant or lawyer, Why not spend an afternoon or evening downloading and installing courses directly into your mind? You could theoretically condense 6 years of intense university studies into a weekend and have the same level of knowledge or even greater knowledge compared to someone who took time to learn it the old fashioned way. As more people integrate with technology, it may even lead to a collective hive mind where everyone's brains become processors for collective consciousness shared amongst all integrated people. On one hand, it's very much like the Borg from Star Trek, but on the other hand, it seems to relate with many ancient writings such as Hermetic texts and ideas people like Stephen Greer have put forward, the idea that there is only one consciousness, and while all our bodies appear separate and perceive disconnection from one another, ultimately we're all sharing the same consciousness within the source field. The advent of this kind of technology would have earth-shattering implications for all of us, and life would never be the same. A sense of personal boundaries and privacy disappears as we become more open and interconnected in mind and body. As wonderful as some of these ideas sound, the conspiracy remains who programmed the AI that links into our minds. Much like Facebook and Google operating today, would this mental tech dissolve our personalities, losing our individuality and making us more like robots? When all of us are connected in this kind of way, the lines of reality blur further and we are called to ask, who are we really? Yet microchip technology is really only the beginning for how we might connect through tech, because where things could go are directly into realms straight out of sci-fi movies. Let's start with inconspicuous innovations that could massively change the world landscape. Perhaps one day scientists and engineers complete a prototype artificial eye for blind people. One simple surgery and it's a miracle. People who have been blind their whole lives suddenly have the gift of sight. But it won't stop there. Suddenly, these people can see wavelengths of light that normal eyes can't, have integrated zoom features giving them binocular eyes, and even have augmented reality displays directly in their inner vision. These people could literally play Pokemon Go anywhere without a phone, literally seeing Pokemon all over the place. When cyborgs can not only see, but see better than someone with normal eyes, even people with fine eyesight will want this upgrade, and a new generation of upgraded humans begins. This could happen with prosthetics too, and in a way it already is, although the tech is still in its infancy. If someone loses or breaks legs or arms in a terrible accident, they can one day get bionic limbs more powerful and capable than any normal body part, giving them super strength or super speed, at least up to the limits of what the rest of the biological body can handle. When this tech is available, some people will opt to have arms or legs replaced by bionic body parts. This may be especially popular in top secret super soldier experiments done by militaries of the world if they're not already doing it. Speaking to integrated experiences, let's shift focus to VR. It's not impossible to think that something like the Oasis from Ready Player One could be right around our doorstep, a massive multiplayer online universe that puts you into the experience through VR technology. This could and likely would lead to a form of mass exodus from real life as people begin shifting their lives into this digital realm. Why go to work in an office when you can work from any conceivable place in the universe? Instead of spending time with friends at the bar after work, why not go hunting dragons together? Instead of playing racing games on your iPad, why not go and actually experience a race yourself, completely immersive yet safe from the comfort of your home? With all the suffering in the world and fantastic possibilities offered by VR, some people might seek out a life spent mostly or even totally in-game. While everyone is inside the game, what would happen to the real world? If we are not careful, we may end up with a reality like Ready Player One with massive slums taking over. As people spend less time in the physical dimension, why bother fixing the real world when the in-game world is always perfect, beautiful, or at least exactly as it's designed to be? Even this is not the end, and the lines around what is real begin to blur until you can't even see the line anymore. One day it may become possible to transport your entire consciousness into a game. This concept was powerfully demonstrated by a show called Sword Art Online, in which a VR headset allowed individuals to leave their body behind as they enter an entirely virtual reality. Your body is unconscious, you're not even aware of it, and you experience reality as if you are physically running around in Azeroth, Minecraft, Hyrule, or literally anywhere you want as anyone you want. Recently, this idea was also portrayed in an episode of Black Mirror with a next level VR headset that is just a little disc you put on the side of your head that transports your consciousness into a video game. You enter a world where you can literally do anything, fly, use magic, go on epic quests, or even just spend an entire summer fishing by a beautiful lake in paradise. The question becomes, why spend any time in the physical world at all? Do you want to have a super powerful body or a super sexy one? How do you want your face to look? You can customize it to your liking freely. Since this technology would connect directly to your brain, it could even stimulate sensations like getting drunk, taking psychedelics, or rewiring your thinking patterns to be however you want. If the only concern of having to unplug is eating and going to the bathroom, then undoubtedly someone will create technology that makes it so that isn't even an issue and you will truly never have to leave. One might also wonder what would happen to your physical body if you were to rewire your consciousness and brain inside the game world. Would it change your body appearance at all? A mass exodus from the physical world would create tremendous changes within humanity as part of the human race strives to live in this new world, and another part rebels against it or simply cannot afford to play the game. Once brain integration happens and mass data is collected on people's reactions to certain stimuli or events, artificial intelligence could skillfully filter and alter your perception in reality or completely guide your experience in VR so that you rarely, if ever, have a desire to stop using it. All this technology, especially putting your consciousness into a game, will at some point give game creators awareness of everything about you, your thoughts, feelings, choices, and would allow anyone with the know-how to monitor you on a very intimate level. Yet most people will probably skip past the 50 to 100 pages of terms of service and press accept anyway, because the ability to shoot fireballs and fly is waiting for them on the other side of the sign-up page. Seeing the pinnacle of all this together, as humanity grows and becomes more advanced and can even create an entirely robot body, if we can transfer our consciousness, thoughts, and memories into a machine, then we could exist with a robot body just like Ultron himself. When that day comes, we will be forced to ask, what constitutes a human being? To some people, this already sounds amazing and can't wait for the future. However, the conspiratorial aspect comes in the form of a question as we step into the next 100 years of change and beyond, who is really running the show? The foundation of the internet as we know it is rooted in algorithms beyond anyone's understanding, designed almost entirely for profit and marketing. Who controls these algorithms? Who dictates what we see? Currently, our attention is essentially open to the highest bidder, but is it possible that AI itself could take us all over? If we are integrated into this collective mind, is it possible for someone to simply decide what we think and feel? Even when the internet was in its infant stages, people were fantasizing about free and open access to information revolutionizing the world. While that tech did become available, social media has also come to the forefront and allowed some of our worst primal instincts like tribalism and manipulation to resurface with greater strength than ever before. In a recent Netflix documentary called The Social Dilemma, several ex-employees of many social media tech giants like Google, Facebook, Instagram, and more sat down to reveal what they had inadvertently created with pioneering technology, a monster. They explain that they have created a world in which billions of lives are affected by the decisions of a small number of programmers, a social reality in which, through the way apps and software work, it facilitates very small and subtle changes in the way people think and feel. It's so subtle that you don't even know it's happening, but the result is that most of us end up living inside a delusional bubble, seeing only content we're already exposed to seeing, and this software can even help us create negative responses to people who believe anything different than us. The technologies they explained are designed specifically to get as much engagement out of you as possible, to get you spending more and more time and then more money just by browsing these social media sites. Really take a moment to think about that. Every single thing that comes up on your own social media feed was put there by an algorithm that was trying to get you to keep scrolling, to warm you up to spending money with an AD, or continue to foster engagement by connecting with other people and bringing them back to the app too. A supposedly leaked document from a marketing presentation for video games showed dozens of pages, plans, and methods to use AI and data collection on the target gamer to determine when they were more likely to buy in-game items and aggressively market to them by displaying offers at those times. Audio captured by devices revealed to AI the gender and mood of the player and found that Wi-Fi signals could reveal their location, such as if the player is in the car or in their bedroom laying down. The AI would also pick up mouse movements and typing speed, revealing levels of engagement, determining how best to serve these ads to individuals. All of this data is fed into AI and analyzed by the marketing team to exploit human psychology for the sake of selling virtual goods. The presentation goes as far as using voice tone analysis to determine when players are slightly, moderately, and severely depressed, then reduces the use of emotion-based advertisements and switches to logic-based advertisements, which were shown to be more effective in depression. You can imagine what other tactics they might be using, and combined with their ability to manipulate the game to influence your state once you purchase more from their store. One singular and perhaps most critical question we can ask ourselves in relationship to this new technology is, what is truth? How do we define and collectively agree on truth? Specifically, if we live in a world where no matter what you believe, you can always find support or evidence for arguments and perspectives you hold, want to believe the earth is flat, round, or hollow. You can find ample evidence for all three. Are you left wing, right wing, extreme center? It doesn't matter. On the internet, these ways of thinking are both the greatest, most logical, and perfect way of thinking, and the most destructive way of thinking that is destroying our beautiful planet, all at the same time, depending on who you ask. Thus, the question of truth becomes pertinent. How do we collectively as a species find truth together? SEC government operations. Today, the QAnon movement calls it the deep state. To us, the first time we became aware of it was mentioned in a book from the early 1990s, The Ancient Secret of the Flower of Life. In this book, they were referred to as the secret government. According to Drunvalo Melchizedek, the secret government has known about the extent of damage we've been doing to ourselves and the world since as early as the 1940s, but have been desperately trying to keep it hidden from the public and sway us from our higher calling. The concept of the secret government or deep state is useful in explaining how government agencies can gain power by keeping secrets. Most of us today are used to and perhaps even indoctrinated into feeling secure in our democratic model of government. It's created a sense of all citizens being involved with and aware of what's going on, and if citizens believe this, whether it's true or not, it builds trust. But this is not the natural state of power or control. Throughout almost all of history, rulers and those in power had no obligation to be open to their populace. Backdoor deals and secrecy were default settings, and having fewer people to answer to and explain to naturally gave them more power. Power seekers thrive in secrecy and misdirection. When Greece introduced democracy and the United States modernized it, was considered ingenious and revolutionary. For the people to protect it, the entire ethos of American culture was built around a more open and citizen-run government, eventually becoming the new standard for most of the modern world and a source of pride for nations that achieved it. But what if this sense of pride and security were an illusion, a front for the real operation, a modern-day human edition of the holographic demiurge? What if behind the scenes there exists a power influencing not just direct actions of the U.S. government in both sides of their political spectrum, but also other countries? What if there was a power that held influence over the US, UK, Canada, and even China and Russia? Power is checked in public but grows in secret, so it is natural to wonder, if power grows in secret, then how do we know that the most powerful forces directing this play are not also the most invisible? What if some of the greatest conflicts and global events were architected from a secret world government? Not since the JFK assassination has there been a national tragedy so heavily imprinted in American minds, or one that has given rise to quite as many alternative explanations outside the mainstream narrative. Despite taking place almost 20 years ago, over 42% of Americans today believe that the government and the 9/11 Commission concealed or refused to investigate critical evidence that contradicts their official explanation of the attacks. All of this questioning created a massive alternative narrative of events that covers everything from the days leading up to the attacks, their execution, and the aftermath. The most infamous aspect of the theories is that the collapse of the towers, specifically Tower 7, were the result of controlled and deliberate demolitions rather than the impact of the planes. This is seen almost to be self-evident considering Building 7 fell at almost the exact same time as the other two towers, but miraculously without a plane even coming close to it. Surveys even suggest that most people who see a video of Building 7 very quickly begin to question and doubt the official mainstream narrative. Jumping back in time a few days before the event, it is purported that the U.S. government knew about the coming attack days or even weeks in advance, and deliberately failed to prevent it or even purposefully allowed it to happen. This is purported even by Michael Meacher, a former British Environment Minister and member of Tony Blair's government in the UK. Evidence to this is found in stock value alterations for the airlines that were hijacked leading up to the event, when a huge amount of put options were placed for American Airlines and United Airlines, a financial tool that gives owners options money if the price of the stock falls. Some economic and business journals have gone on record saying that this is evidence of unusual option market activity in the days leading up to September 11th that is consistent with investors trading on advanced knowledge of the attacks. To put it in perspective, between September 6th and 7th, the Chicago Board Exchange recorded nearly 744 put option contracts bought in United Airlines. Then on September 10th, another 516 stocks were bought in American Airlines. Naturally, the 9/11 Commission says that the weird behavior was just coincidental, but nevertheless, these put auctions made someone a lot of money. A separate line of suspicion stems from the actions taken by NORAD, North American Aerospace Defense Command, and the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, on that day. There's much speculation about whether NORAD issued a stand-down order to its fighter jets on 9/11, along with delays in the FAA to notify NORAD of the potential threat. According to FAA records, the notification to NORAD about the hijacking of each plane came just minutes before they would crash, despite the FAA noticing unusual behavior like failure to stay on course and shut down transponder on American Airlines Flight 11 just 16 seconds after takeoff. NORAD would not be called to action or notified for over 20 minutes. In a country with the most robust and sophisticated defense in the world, a fumble this bad with such dire consequences can't help but add to the mystery around what really took place. Now we get to the controlled demolition. This theory states that explosives installed in the building in advance were the real cause of the collapse and wide-reaching destruction, first shared by Dutch demolitions expert Danny Joinko, who in 2006 said that aircraft impact and resulting fires couldn't have weakened the building sufficiently enough to initiate a collapse, and that they wouldn't even have collapsed completely nor at the speeds that they did without additional energy involved to weaken their lower structures. He came to the conclusion that this was a controlled demolition carried out by experts, something that has since been supported by some physicists, engineers, software developers, and modelers, along with a range of other fields. The mainstream analysis, in contrast, asserts that the collapse resulted from damage to support columns caused largely by the weakening of columns and floors by jet fuel fires. Stephen Jones, a physicist at Brigham Young University, along with other researchers, analyzed samples of dust from the World Trade Center buildings and reported that their findings contained evidence of nanothermite in the dust, which are products used in high-level explosives. When he informed the National Institute of Standards and Technology about his findings, they argued that there was no way of knowing the dust he analyzed came from those buildings. When he asked them to conduct their own study, they refused. On top of that, eyewitnesses reported seeing and hearing explosions happening before the collapse of the towers, and the organization International Center for 9/11 Studies has published videos with indications about when such explosions could be heard. The collapse of Building 7 also wasn't even reported in the initial report. and NIST, the agency charged with investigating the event, took 7 years to publish anything that even acknowledged it. Looking into who was actually working in the building at the time, you'll find that it housed some pretty interesting residents, including a secret CIA office on the 25th floor, an outpost of the U.S. Secret Service, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and New York City's Emergency Command Center. All of these secret offices go down the day of the attack. Last but not least, we have the Pentagon. Theorists have argued that the damage done to the Pentagon wasn't the result of a plane, but potentially a missile launched from inside the U.S. government, citing the dimensions of the impact as evidence. After all, how does a plane 125 feet wide and 155 feet long create a hole that's only 60 feet across? Plane wreckage has apparently been found at the crash site, and eyewitnesses say that they saw a plane crash. Even the conspiracy theorists themselves don't agree on the missile idea, but could the witnesses have been paid actors? Could the pieces of plane have been planted there? The only footage available is from this security camera, and conveniently, no frames are available to see what hit. Whatever happened at the Pentagon, the question remains, how could a plane make its way not only into the airspace of one of the most secure military sites in the world, but also crash into their most predominant headquarters? Just like Building 7, theorists hypothesized that incriminating evidence of government wrongdoing was targeted in the Pentagon attack. Observing the bigger picture then, why? Why did this happen? The most common theory is that 9/11 provided the United States and the United Kingdom with a reason to enter into a war against the Middle East, most notably Iraq and Afghanistan, providing motive and support from the general public. Most theories about this suggest that the U.S. was after oil in the Middle East, and others purport a variety of banking, corporate, globalization, and military interests for the purpose of creating a globalist government, a one-world order that could be run behind the scenes by the cabal. But the most interesting theory comes from Dr. Michael Salla, who states that Saddam Hussein, the leader of Iraq at the time, had actually found remnants of a stargate built by the Anunnaki while excavating one of the ziggurats, ancient Mesopotamian temples in Iraq. As a result, he had threatened to use it to interact with the Anunnaki to bring about mass disclosure and domination. Thus, the orchestration of the 9/11 attacks was a deliberate ruse to justify the acquisition of the Stargate and other ancient artifacts and technologies into Western hands, and to learn more about this mysterious species. If any of this is true, then that would imply that at the time, a secret government with their hands in many countries may not have had as much influence as they wanted with certain countries in the Middle East. Or, if the secret government had complete control, then for what reason could they have purposefully staged this event? When we pull back the curtain on the workings behind the scenes, things become strange and even frightening. MK Ultra and mind control. The most infamous mind control experiment in history is MK Ultra, otherwise known as Project Bluebird. The most terrifying thing about it is that it isn't even a theory. MK Ultra was a real, documented CIA program for which the CIA has faced repercussions legally. It's well established that some of the experiments in the Ultra Project were illegal. The U.S. government willingly experimented on its citizens without their knowledge or consent. Yet no one seems to bat an eyelash, perhaps because no one really knows the true extent of what actually went on behind closed doors. The official aim was that experiments on humans were intended to develop drugs and procedures to be used in interrogations in order to weaken individuals and force confessions through mind control. The program was officially authorized in 1953, but supposedly got reduced funding continually until its disbandment in 1973. There was also the elusive Montauk experiments located at Camp Hero, Montauk, which began in the 1950s. Camp Hero also swirls with conspiracies and rumors of mind control, psychedelic drug experiments, child abduction, and even time travel. It seems incredibly coincidental that the Camp Hero events started in the 1950s, which also experimented with mind control. It doesn't seem to be a stretch to argue these two projects were connected somehow. The events of MK Ultra came to light in 1975 after an inquest by the Rockefeller Commission. Yet efforts to find the background of Ultra were hindered by CIA Director Richard Helms's order that all MK Ultra files be destroyed in 1973. As a result, the committee had to rely on the sworn testimony of direct participants and on the relatively small number of documents that survived Helms's order. In 1977, a Freedom of Information Act request uncovered a cache of 20 documents relating to MK Ultra, which led to Senate hearings later that year. As recently as 2018, declassified documents included a letter to an unidentified doctor discussing work on 6 dogs that had been made to run, turn, and stop via remote control and brain implants during the experiments. Modern estimates place the funding and budget at roughly $87.5 million in today's money. A lot of the early research was focused around the psychedelic drug LSD and whether it could be used to make Soviet spies defect against their will, and whether the Soviets could do the same to the CIA's own operatives. When it first began, they didn't test on strong-minded people, though. No, the first tests of the drug were done on mental patients, prisoners, drug addicts, and sex workers because, and I quote, they couldn't fight back. According to Tim Weiner writing in the New York Times, they once administered LSD to a mental patient in Kentucky for 174 days straight, as well as giving it to their own employees, military personnel, and, scariest of all, unknowing members of the general public in order to study their reactions. Many of the drugs were often administered without the subject's knowledge or informed consent, which was a violation of the Nuremberg Code after World War II. This is the only place where the CIA got into legal trouble. It is thought that the aim of this was to find which drugs would bring about deep confessions or wipe a subject's mind clean to be able to program them as robot agents later on. Another part of the project worked at Menlo Park's Veterans Hospital, where they tested the effects of every kind of psychedelic on the residents there, everything ranging from LSD, psilocybin, mescaline, and cocaine, and even DMT and AMT, another lesser-known psychedelic but similar in nature to DMT. In these experiments, adverse reactions were a pretty common occurrence. One operative who received LSD in his morning coffee became psychotic and ran across Washington seeing a monster in every car passing him. The experiments continued even after Frank Olson, an Army chemist who had never taken LSD before, was secretly dosed by his CIA supervisor and 9 days later plunged to his death from the window of a 13-story New York City hotel room after falling into post-trip depression and paranoia. There were some people who did consent, and they were subject to even more extreme experiments, such as being dosed with LSD for 77 consecutive days. The culmination of all this research, however, was that by 1962 the CIA had developed a series of super hallucinogens, most notably the BZ compound, which was thought to hold greater promise as a mind control weapon. It was at this point that many academics and private researchers became disillusioned with the project. Perhaps the greatest lesson we can learn from this revelation coming to light is not only the extreme methods employed by those within the deep state, but also the acknowledgement that just as much as psychedelics can be used for healing and therapy, there is ample evidence now that they can be used to invoke darkness and lasting psychotic states, and it entirely depends on how they're used, messing with the neurochemistry instead of harmonizing it with a higher consciousness. While all of this was happening, they also experimented with hypnosis, with goals of creating hypnotically induced anxieties, as well as increasing an individual's ability to learn complex material and increasing memory and cognitive ability. To do this, the CIA actually ended up setting up what were essentially concentration camps for study. Once again, we see the value and terrors that come with hypnosis. All the while, in the mainstream world, it is laughed at as nothing more than superstition. As Stephen Kinzer pointed out, in areas under American control in the early 1950s in Europe and East Asia, mostly Japan, Germany, and the Philippines, the CIA created secret detention centers so that the U.S. could avoid criminal prosecution and work in secret. The CIA captured people suspected of being enemy agents and other people it deemed expendable to undertake various types of torture and human experimentation. The prisoners were interrogated while being administered psychoactive drugs, electroshock, and subjected to extremes of temperature, sensory isolation, and a whole host of other terrible things in order to develop a better understanding of how to destroy and to control human minds. These experiments likely developed tremendous understanding of how the brain responds to a variety of extremes and how it interacts with and filters consciousness. But at what cost and for what ultimate purpose? Could these experiments have led to influential decisions in manipulating the mainstream narrative, perhaps behind 9/11 or even the COVID pandemic? After 1973, when all of this began to come out into the public, it prompted a number of subjects or their surviving children to file lawsuits against the federal government for conducting experiments without consent. Although the government aggressively and sometimes successfully sought to avoid legal liability, several people did receive compensation through court orders, and this whole battle is still going on today. In fact, while the CIA insists that MK Ultra type experiments have been abandoned, Canadian investigative journalist Elizabeth Nixon, whose mother was a subject, claims that they continue today under a different name. Returning to the beginning, MK Ultra initially came to public awareness due to an inquest from the Rockefeller Commission. Generally today, when you look into the question of the Illuminati, who are often presumed to be the secret government, the Rockefeller family often appears at the top of the list in association or connection. However, it seems that in this case, the Rockefellers brought something nefarious to light. The question is, why? Why would they rat out their own operation if they truly were behind it? Was this all orchestrated as part of a singular greater intention, or are the Rockefellers playing a different game than has been assumed for so long? If the conspiracy theories are to be believed, then it would seem as though this secret government is extremely powerful, pulling strings and influencing global events on nearly every side, as if pushing and pulling everything we perceive. In the Flower of Life books, Melchizedek explains that long ago in ancient Egypt, the ascended master named Thoth, upon requiring something to happen for the salvation of our species, would appear to a particular leader, a pharaoh at the time, and demonstrate who he was through a miraculous feat such as glowing or levitating, and then instructing them to take a specific action. While it's very easy to fall into the fear that all things are controlled by a nefarious mind, the holographic demiurge, could it be that ascended masters such as Jesus, Thoth, or even the Anunnaki also have been subtly influencing our species in secretive ways? According to the sources behind this information, it says that while there are many experiments going on behind the scenes, along with large catastrophes to Earth's environments, knowing and cultivating the energy within your body, the toroidal energetic field of your heart and the human light body, often called a Merkaba, bestows you with the ability to change everything. You can heal yourself and the world around you, alleviate suffering, and bring peace and harmony to the world. For spirit lives within you, and truly all things are possible. All it takes is an effort to learn and connect with the benevolent God spark within you. The greatest challenge, then, may very well be that not everybody is looking to create this connection, and it seems as though many don't even care at all. Proster, advanced weaponry, and weather control. Over the last several years, the directed energy weapons conspiracy has taken root across the internet as major fires erupted from California to Australia. Speculation that these were not natural fires quickly took the internet by storm as hundreds of thousands of people shared videos showing what appeared to be laser beams striking the area of the fire, often just before the inferno began. These directed energy weapons, shortened now to DEWs, are believed to be powerful superweapons using satellite technology or stealth aircraft and part of a difficult to detect weaponization of the skies and heavens. Looking back to nearly 100 years ago, it's well known that Nikola Tesla himself was working on a death ray, although he provided a different, more neutral title, particle beam, developed under the code name Teleforce. This device supposedly accelerated pellets or slugs of material to a high velocity inside a vacuum chamber using electrostatic repulsion, and then fired them out of aimed nozzles at intended targets. When talking about his device in 1934, he explained that many thousands of horsepower can thus be transmitted by a stream thinner than a hair, so that nothing can resist, going on to say that in theory it could bring down a fleet of 10-0 enemy airplanes at a distance of 200 miles from a defending nation's border and will cause armies to drop dead in their tracks, culminating in the tagline that it would be a weapon to end all wars. We know that after Tesla died, John Trump, brought in by the Office of Alien Property, found what was left of Tesla's death ray, a 45-year-old multi-decade resistance box, which is an instrument that can replicate different electrical values in a circuit. Is it possible that Tesla's particle beam laid the groundwork for the so-called DEWs being used today? And if so, what reason would there be for using it to start the California and possibly Australia fires? The first time DEWs were brought to public attention was in 2017 when Napa, California suffered the biggest wildfire in its history, and countless YouTube investigations took place into videos and photos of fires skipping houses and trees, seemingly burning straight lines through the community. The next year, two separate California fires began on November 8, 2018, the Camp Fire and the Woolsey Fire. Once again, people began to notice some pictures and video captured that seemed to show evidence of energy beams from the heavens assaulting the Golden State. Things become even weirder when we take into account the video of a burning tree from the inside, begging the question, how would this even happen? Some might suggest that it was hit by lightning, but that's rather unlikely in the midst of a wildfire, especially seeing that around the tree there doesn't look like there's much fire nearby. There's also definitely no rain. The wildfires were indeed very strange. Consider the images of cars melting on the road near intact wildlife, houses burned to ash beside their unharmed neighbors, and other oddities. While of course some people might have set their houses on fire amidst the chaos to cash in on their insurance, there's enough evidence here to suggest there's more at play than just that. But the most incriminating evidence for the use of DEWs is satellite data collected on the scene. This video was released only on September 8, 2020, showing that DEWs are a significant likelihood for explaining the origins of these devastating wildfires. So if it's true that wildfires are being started with DEWs, then who is behind it? Why are they doing it? Is it the Chinese or the Russians trying to covertly attack the US? Is it the government themselves trying to clear land or cause panic and poverty to breed dependence in its population? Many theorists suggest that the fires both in California and Australia happen to be along the paths that long proposed high-speed rail networks would be built, and that the military testing may very well be performed in a location that would clear space and cheap land for the government to use at the same time. An update from the U.S. Department of Defense themselves as recently as September 16th seemingly confirmed the presence of, or at least research into, DEWs, saying that new technologies are fundamentally changing the character of war, and the two Air Force services are leading that charge. China and Russia seek to erode our long-standing dominance in air power through long-range fires, anti-access aerial denial systems, and other asymmetric capabilities designed to counter our strengths. They went on to say that both China and Russia have placed weapons on satellites and are known to be developing directed energy weapons to exploit U.S. systems. While the U.S. government hasn't confirmed or denied if they have their own, if Russia and China have them, then it would only make sense that the U.S. wouldn't be far behind or even secretly be ahead. As we learned from Wernher von Braun, whoever controls and militarizes space ultimately controls the world. Perhaps space is already militarized far more than any of us realize. DEWs are only half the story, however. For just as it's believed the powers that be have immense firepower in the form of super lasers, it's also suggested that they have even discovered how to manipulate and control other aspects of nature, being able to create rain and snow and storms anywhere and any time, or even create earthquakes, which brings us to the next aspect of this theory centered around the Weather Research Program HARP. Since the mid-2000s, the HARP program has become pretty infamous for its connections with everything from chemtrails to hurricanes, and even as recently as 2010, the Venezuelan leader Hugo Chavez claimed that HARP, or a program like it, triggered the Haiti earthquake. To be fair, he didn't cite a source, and the official story is that it was caused by the slippage of a previously unmapped fault along the border of the Caribbean and North American tectonic plates. At any rate, HARP stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program and was essentially put forward as a weather research initiative. It was designed to analyze the ionosphere, a portion of the upper atmosphere that stretches from about 53 miles above the surface of the Earth to 370 miles up. The program had been funded by the Air Force, the Navy, the University of Alaska, and DARPA. In May of 2014, the Air Force announced that the HARP program would be shut down later that year, but while experiments ended in the summer of 2014, the complete shutdown and dismantling of the facility was postponed until at least May of 2015. Nowadays, however, the facility and equipment are controlled by the University of Alaska Fairbanks, who hire it out to independent researchers. The official research was mostly weather-based, as you might have guessed, but the U.S. military was also interested in the ionosphere because it plays a role in transmitting radio signals. HARP sends radio beams into the ionosphere to study the responses from it, one of the few ways to accurately measure this inaccessible part of the atmosphere. The end goal of the program, however, was to understand the physics of the ionosphere, which is constantly responding to influences from the sun. Solar flares can send solar particles racing toward Earth, occasionally disrupting communications and the electrical grid. If scientists could better understand what happens in the ionosphere, they might be able to mitigate some of these problems. Naturally, any notion of scientists messing with frequency signals and solar flares is a hotbed for alternative theories regarding weather manipulation, though. Michel Chossudovsky has argued that recent evidence suggests that HAARP is fully operational and has the capability of triggering floods, droughts, hurricanes, and earthquakes. While a lot of the theories surrounding HAARP are just conjecture, some sources have argued that during the Obama administration, it was used to cause Hurricane Sandy, and throughout its years of operation, it has arguably been responsible for thunderstorms in Iran, Pakistan, Haiti, Turkey, Greece, and the Philippines, and even causing major power outages, the downing of TWA Flight 800, Gulf War Syndrome, chronic fatigue syndrome, and, on a more benevolent note, it was also responsible for the creation of the first artificially produced aurora in 2015. The program cost more than $290 million to build, with much of the budget being earmarked by the late Senator Ted Stevens, who had great influence over the U.S. defense budget during his time in Congress. When looking into the whole thing, though, two names that almost always come up are that of Nick Begich and his son Mark. Nick was an Alaskan politician who disappeared mysteriously in a plane crash in 1972, and over the years his son became obsessed with uncovering mysteries. In his self-published book on HAARP, Mark claimed that a Russian military journal warned that blasting the ionosphere would trigger a cascade of electrons that could flip Earth's magnetic poles. While it may sound like a good science fiction novel, it's no secret that the Alaska State Legislature and the European Parliament held hearings about HAARP and did in fact get into disputes over concerns about what effects it could have on the environment. Further, the military's response only worried theorists more when program managers swore that the facility would never be used for military functions. Mark went on to find military reports touting satellite blinding research plans, along with then Secretary of Defense William Cohen's suggestion that electromagnetic waves could alter the climate and control earthquakes and volcanoes remotely. Numerous theories have also suggested that HAARP is responsible for a mysterious hum heard all around the world, along with the targeted individuals phenomenon using frequency targeting for certain individuals. Naturally, since the facility has officially been shut down, allegations argue that such actions in cases of advanced technology are the work of the deep state. H. The Philadelphia. Experiment and time manipulation. The Philadelphia experiment is probably one of the most famous advanced technology theories out there today, and it goes something like this. It was the summer of 1943, 2 years into the United States' involvement in World War II. A bloody sea battle was raging between American destroyers and the famed U-boat submarines of the Nazis. In the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, a newly commissioned destroyer called the USS Eldridge was being equipped with several large generators as part of a top-secret mission to win the Battle of the Atlantic once and for all. Supposedly, however, these new generators weren't just for extra engine speed. Following the theoretical aspects of Project Rainbow, they were designed to power a new kind of magnetic field that would make the warship invisible to enemy radar. According to the theory, with the full crew on board, Once the generators were switched on, witnesses described an eerie green glow surrounding the hull of the ship. Then, almost instantaneously, the Eldridge disappeared, not even visible to radar. Entirely gone, vanished into thin air. According to supposed classified military reports, when the ship returned, members of the crew suffered terrible burns and disorientation, along with a few crew members being found partially embedded in the steel hull of the ship, still alive but with legs or arms sealed to the deck. The experiment was allegedly based on an aspect of some unified field theory, which merged theories of electromagnetism and gravity into one complete theory. The generators were said to be able to bend light around an object via refraction so that the object became completely invisible. However, other theories are far more interesting, suggesting that the Eldridge actually moved into a higher dimension, which is how, upon returning, people were found merged to the ship. Despite the effects on the crew, however, some theorists put forth that the experiment was repeated on October 28, 1943. This time, the Eldridge not only became invisible, but it disappeared from the area in a flash of blue light and reappeared in Norfolk, Virginia, over 200 miles away. It's said that the Eldridge sat for some time in view of men aboard the SS Andrew Furuseth, whereupon the ship vanished again and reappeared in Philadelphia at the site it had originally occupied. And what's more, it had somehow traveled 10 minutes back in time. To understand if there is any truth to this conspiracy event, however, we need to look at the people who first brought it to light. In general, almost everything we know about the Philadelphia experiment comes from two main people. In 1955, ufologist, astronomer, and researcher Morris Jessup had just published his book on the case for UFOs and the government when he got two letters from a man named Carlos Miguel Allende, who claimed to have witnessed the events of the experiment, claiming that not only had the ship been rendered invisible, but that they had actually shifted dimensions. Jessup thought Allende was a wacko since he claimed to have been taught by Albert Einstein himself. In the letters, Allende explained how the U.S. military used Einstein's revelations to conduct the experiment, but after that no other witnesses from the crew of the Eldridge or nearby ships came forward. For 13 years or so, after trying to figure out if Allende's claims had any truth to them, Jessup was frustrated and ready to drop the investigation entirely when he was contacted by two officers from the Navy Office of Naval Research, or the ONR, saying that they had received a copy of Jessup's book annotated by handwritten notes claiming advanced knowledge of physics that linked extraterrestrial technology to breakthroughs in unified field theory. Jessup took a look and immediately recognized Allende's handwriting, after which the ONR actually published over 127 copies with the annotations included. Eventually, this idea became so popular in fringe theories that it was turned into a feature film in 1984. For years, Allende had claimed to be the sole witness of the experiment, claiming to have been stationed on the SS Furuseth. After the release of the film, however, a man named Al Bielek came forward claiming to have personally taken part in the experiment and said that he had been brainwashed to forget. It was only after seeing the movie in 1984 that his repressed memories came flooding back. But our story doesn't end there, for the events of the Montauk Air Force Base supposedly continued where the Philadelphia experiment left off. Following the theories put forward by Preston Nichols and Peter Moon sometime in the late 1950s, secret researchers from the original Philadelphia project began to conduct research into manipulating the electromagnetic fields for military use, simultaneously looking into its effects on human psychology and behavior, and perhaps even going deeper into understanding the mysterious dimensional shift that supposedly took place. A report was supposedly prepared and presented to the United States Congress, which was strongly rejected for being way too dangerous and inhumane. So instead, the researchers made direct contact with the Department of Defense, promising a powerful new weapon that could drive an enemy insane, inducing symptoms of schizophrenia at the touch of a button. Without mainstream approval, the project would have to be top secret and black funded. According to the theory, the Department of Defense approved, and Project Phoenix was born. Supposedly, equipment was moved to Camp Hero at the Montauk base in the mid to late 1960s and installed in an underground bunker beneath the base so that they could take advantage of the satellite dish without drawing public attention. According to conspiracy theorists, To mask the nature of the project, the site was closed in 1969 and donated as a wildlife refuge park, yet even the government maintains that Camp Hero remained in operation well into the 1980s. This is where the theory starts to get pretty dark, as numerous people have pointed out atrocities that were supposedly committed. Supposedly, homeless people were abducted and subjected to huge amounts of electromagnetic radiation, with few surviving. People allegedly had their psychic abilities enhanced to the point where they could materialize objects out of thin air, but at the cost of their emotional and mental stability. Mind control experiments were conducted. Runaway boys were supposedly abducted and brought out to the base, where they underwent excruciating periods of both physical and mental torture in order to break their minds, after which their minds were reprogrammed. And, of course, research into time travel and dimensional doorways were happening constantly. Could this also be the roots of the legendary Montauk monster, a strange creature that washed up on shore near Montauk in 2008? Some believe that this may have even been a higher dimensional creature which was brought into our reality during the experiments. After the experiments were completed, depending on which theory you read, the facility was closed for good or destroyed, and all the staff were brainwashed, shot, or sworn to absolute secrecy, with all records also destroyed. According to some theories, though, research continues at the site with enhanced security. One of the most popular tellings of the Montauk experiments is with the Netflix series Stranger Things, of which the original title was actually going to be Montauk. Now, if time or dimensional travel is involved, then it may be possible that humanity has existed in multiple realities or timelines, and that even one instance of time travel may result in millions of people shifting into another time stream in the multiverse, where things are ever so slightly different than they were before. The Mandela effect is a widespread phenomenon where people en masse remember certain things differently than they are today. Officially, the phenomenon is categorized as a case of false memory in mainstream circles, but the name was coined after Nelson Mandela, the former president of South Africa, who was reported to have died in 2013. The problem is, countless people all over the world, including Fiona Broome, who came up with the term, distinctly remember him dying in prison in the 1980s. Another weird example is Neil Armstrong. Strangely, despite his importance, people had no recollection of his death. Many fans apparently forgot or didn't notice the news of his passing in August of 2012. One of the more studied prominent examples, though, comes from a 2010 study that examined people familiar with the clock at Bologna Central Railway Station, which was damaged in the bombing in August 1980. In the study, 92% of respondents falsely remembered the clock had remained stopped since the bombing, when in fact the clock was repaired shortly after the attack. Other very well-known Mandela effects include the title of the cartoon Looney Tunes actually being spelled Tunes rather than Toons, Curious George actually never having a tail, Fruit Loops only being spelled with one E, Forrest Gump saying his famous phrase in the past tense, stating that life was like a box of chocolates, Pikachu having a black mark on his tail, but today he doesn't. Berenstein Bears actually spelled Berenstein Bears actually spelled Berenstein Bears, and even some cases of people thinking there were 51 or 52 states in the U.S. rather than 50, although that last one might be just an indictment of the American education system. Some New Age proponents of this do argue that such large-scale false memories are evidence of dimension hopping or shifting to an alternative or parallel reality where things are similar but ever so slightly different. The question is, if this is true, who is causing us to switch realities? Is it simply accidental, or is someone deliberately manifesting a collective reality that we're all complicit in? If the secret government did indeed perform time travel experiments and shifted our realities even just a bit, what else might have been changed in our past, present, or future? You see, if the powers that be actually have control of this reality, then nothing is off limits. Time and space could be bent to the will of anyone who had the power or technology to do so. In that case, the question is, who is ultimately driving the ship of the paradigms in which we exist? Do we have any say at all in our future? Who has the keys to ultimate power? The mysteries are about to be revealed. Secker trails in atmospheric manipulation. For decades, a mystery in the skies has captivated and deeply concerned people across the world. Chemtrails, the long white streaks left behind by high-flying airplanes, have sparked fierce debates among scientists, researchers, and skeptics alike. To some, these trails are thought of as harmless condensation trails, contrails formed when water vapor in jet exhaust freezes at high altitudes. But this simply cannot be true, because contrails dissipate very quickly while chemtrails linger for hours and hours, indicating that there's something else being dispersed. Thus, many have come to see them as something far more calculated and sinister, deliberate chemical dispersals aimed at achieving specific hidden agendas. The modern chemtrail theory began to take shape in the late 1990s and early 2000s when observers noticed the unusual persistence in these trails, forming hazy patterns, sometimes seeming like a deliberate crisscross in the sky. Many began to question whether something unusual was occurring in the upper atmosphere. The release of a 1996 U.S. Air Force report titled Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025's added fuel to the fire. The document speculated on future military uses of weather modification technology, including its potential to enhance or disrupt military operations. Around the same time, growing attention was being paid to the HAARP research facility in Alaska, a high-frequency ionosphere research program suspected by some to be part of secret experiments involving weather control, electromagnetic manipulation, and even mind control. By 1999, the late-night radio host Art Bell began discussing chemtrail theories on his widely popular show, introducing the concept to an even larger audience. That same year, Clifford Carnicom, a scientist and one of the earliest investigators, conducted a series of atmospheric tests. Carnicom's experiments revealed high levels of unusual particles in the air, including metallic particles, strange fibers, and crystalline substances. His findings suggested that something unnatural was being introduced into the atmosphere. These discoveries became the foundation of the chemtrail theory, and the term chemtrails was born. Carnicom's subsequent documentary, Aerosol Crimes, released in 2005, presented evidence of atmospheric manipulation and inspired a new wave of researchers to join the investigation. Over the years, chemtrail researchers have identified a wide range of suspected motives for these operations, each more unsettling than the last. One of the most commonly proposed explanations is weather modification. Geoengineering techniques such as cloud seeding, which involves spraying silver iodide to induce rainfall, are well documented and widely used. Chemtrail theorists suggest these techniques may have been taken to extreme levels, with the military or private organizations attempting to manipulate global weather patterns. This could include attempts to reduce the effects of climate change, creating artificial droughts or storms, or using the weather as a weapon in covert warfare. The role of HAARP is often tied to these theories, with some claiming it enhances the atmospheric effects of chemtrails, allowing precise control over weather systems or disrupting enemy nations' agriculture and infrastructure. Other theories propose that chemtrails are being used for psychological or biological manipulation. Some believe that chemicals dispersed through chemtrails suppress human consciousness, keeping people docile, compliant, and disconnected from their spiritual potential. Others suggest that these chemicals are linked to health issues such as respiratory illnesses, autoimmune diseases, and even conditions like Morgellons syndrome, a rare and controversial skin disorder. While mainstream science has not verified these claims, the persistence of these theories raises questions about the long-term effects of airborne particulates on human health. Further, the presence of metallic particles such as aluminum and barium in the atmosphere, as suggested by independent studies, has led some to speculate that these chemicals could interact with electromagnetic fields to alter human behavior or even target specific populations. Theorists claim that these particles are deliberately introduced to conduct experiments on mass populations without their consent. The more elaborate theories argue that chemtrails are designed to fulfill multiple agendas simultaneously. These include controlling food populations by altering soil chemistry to favor genetically modified crops, manipulating global populations by reducing fertility rates, and even preparing the atmosphere for advanced holographic or electromagnetic technologies. Photographs of unmarked military jets leaving these trails have further fueled suspicions, with many asking why the chemicals being released cannot be analyzed more widely. Despite widespread discussion, mainstream scientific and governmental organizations have consistently denied the existence of chemtrails. In response to the public's growing concern, the Environmental Protection Agency, the NSA, the Federal Aviation Administration, and the NOAA issued a joint fact sheet explaining contrails as a natural byproduct of jet engine exhaust in cold, humid air. It seemed to most paying attention, however, that the swift and coordinated denial was seen not as clarification but as evidence of a cover-up. This tension has only deepened in the internet age, where searches for chemtrails yield millions of results, the majority of which are articles attempting to debunk the theory. Critics argue that this is evidence of collusion between tech companies and governments to suppress the truth, though tech companies claim they are simply combating misinformation. Project Blue Beam. But the story doesn't end here. In fact, it seems to connect to an even larger and more ominous theory, Project Blue Beam. First proposed by Canadian journalist Serge Monast in the 1990s, Project Blue Beam describes a covert plan to use advanced technologies to stage a global crisis, one designed to bring about a new world order. According to Monast, the plan involves 4 stages, each more elaborate than the last. The first stage involves undermining existing religious beliefs by fabricating archaeological discoveries that challenge traditional doctrines. Ancient artifacts or texts could be discovered and used to suggest that widely accepted religious histories are false, shaking faiths and preparing humanity for the next step, the introduction of a new universal religion. The second stage involves the use of holographic technology to project images of religious figures or deities into the skies over different regions of the world. These projections would communicate messages to their followers, appearing as the fulfillment of prophecies or divine interventions. Christians might see Jesus, Muslims might see Muhammad, and Hindus might see Krishna, but eventually all these figures would converge into a single universal deity who claims to unify all faiths under one new religion. The third stage employs electromagnetic wave technology to simulate telepathic communication. Monist claimed that technologies capable of transmitting audio directly into people's minds, so-called voice-to-skull systems, would be used to implant thoughts and commands, creating the illusion of divine communication. The final stage is the most dramatic, the staging of a massive global false flag event. This could take the form of an extraterrestrial invasion, a staged apocalypse, or a divine reckoning. The goal is to create fear and disorientation so intense that humanity willingly submits to a one-world government as the only solution to survival. Chemtrails, some theorists argue, play a critical role in this stage by preparing the atmosphere for large-scale holographic projections or dispersing chemicals that alter human perception, making the illusion more convincing. The whole theory is corroborated by Wernher von Braun, a pivotal figure in rocket technology and space exploration, and is often associated with a narrative involving a staged alien invasion. This connection primarily stems from accounts by Dr. Carol Rosen, who worked with von Braun in the 1970s. Rosen recounted that von Braun warned of a sequence of fabricated threats, ranging from rogue nations to asteroids, culminating in a hoax extraterrestrial invasion intended to justify the expansion of military capabilities into space. While von Braun's warnings, as conveyed by Rosen, and the tenets of Project Blue Beam share thematic similarities, particularly the idea of a fabricated alien threat to achieve global control, it's important to note that von Braun himself did not publicly document or endorse the specifics of Project Blue Beam. The connections between his alleged warnings and Monast's theory are primarily drawn from interpretations and extrapolations within conspiracy theory circles, but still, the narrative of a hoaxed alien invasion as a means to consolidate power is a recurring theme. The ultimate goal, though, of Project Blue Beam is to consolidate power under a single centralized authority. National borders would dissolve and religious and cultural distinctions would be erased. Humanity would be unified under a single digital currency, a universal faith, and constant surveillance by advanced technologies. Fear and manipulation would ensure compliance, as fabricated crises provide justification for authoritarian control. Now, some might consider, besides the darker aspects of this agenda, that this plan would have many benefits. Imagine being able to travel anywhere in the world without need of a passport, to have the whole world working with unified systems, no more war between nations, and never needing to convert money to different currencies. But if all of this was done by a nefarious secret government, then could it really be a good thing? Critics of Project Blue Beam and chemtrail theories argue that they lack evidence and rely on speculation and paranoia. However, for those who believe, these theories represent a warning about the dangers of unchecked technological power and the erosion of personal freedoms. They raise questions about what might be hidden in plain sight and challenge us to stay vigilant in a world where truth is increasingly difficult to discern. Ultimately, it's up to each of us to be strong within our hearts and stand true to the truth, no matter what befalls our species in the future. As always, time will tell. The skies above may hold secrets we are only beginning to uncover. Whether or not these theories are true, they force us to confront the complexities of technology, governance, and the future of human freedom. HU. Unified Theory. At last, we come to the final chapter in our conspiracy theory of everything, the point in which everything comes together, all of the aspects of our theory weaving into a new fabric of reality, if only we choose to see and interact with it. You see, every conspiracy theory we've discussed so far is nothing more than a reflection of something greater, the holographic demiurge. We began our journey with the demiurge, and now we must return to it. To shatter the old paradigm, we must recognize that the demiurge is not just something that is imposed upon us, this false reality, just like the Matrix, but it is a state of consciousness within us. The ancients who spoke of the demiurge did not rail against it physically, for they understood that the powers that be were not the source of the demiurge. They knew that rebelling against the Roman Empire would have no effect at all, just as today, rebelling against world governments or massive corporations will do us no good but stir up karmic trouble for ourselves. No, the true mystic ancients turned their attention inward to the mysteries within them and strove for the revelation of truth, knowledge, and wisdom within them. They followed the wisdom teachings set down before them, from the writings attributed to Thoth to the ministries of Jesus, in order to shatter the illusion of separation. In truth, the demiurge is within us, a form of duality consciousness, a place of disconnection from ourselves and nature, inflicting upon us the belief that we are separate from one another and subject to all manner of suffering from the world around us. Certainly, this reality feels real, just as real as it was to Thomas Anderson before he met Morpheus, and it is this way for a reason. For there are lessons of duality, lessons of physicality, lessons of love, truth, and authenticity which we must learn while we are here. This includes stepping outside of the limiting bubble of our own lives and seeing something greater. As we do so, we step into becoming active creators of our own destiny and become shapers of the world as we know it. Yet humanity today, as we have been for thousands of years, exists within pockets of consciousness, pockets of belief and self-identity. Where 1,000 years ago we were segmented more physically and culturally, today there is a deeper segmentation mentally and emotionally as we isolate in the bubbles of perception based on our search history and the algorithms that decide for us what we see and propel us each down our own paths of least resistance rather than toward each other in unity. You might call such things paradigms of belief or existence, paradigms in which people live, either in minorities or majorities, where individual and communal belief systems shape the actions that people take, leading to natural outcomes as a result of those beliefs. For example, Christians who identify with Jesus returning soon will live by this belief, and this belief will dictate their actions. But those who believe the earth is flat would behave and communicate differently than if they believed the world was round, often each vehemently attacking the opposing spectrum. Yet do such things matter when most of us spend our days entrenched in suffering, often taking it out on one another in silent, subconscious ways? If the end goal is unity, free of this duality consciousness, how do we get there? especially when conspiracy theories of the Great Reset and the implementation of a one world government are so pervading. Is it truly possible to bring everyone together with truth, love, and authenticity? Or is at least part of humanity doomed to mental enslavement forever? As we've explored so far in great detail, it seems as though mental and emotional manipulation is a factor that we must watch out for. But there are a great many people who are asleep to this idea at all. They struggle through the day to day, but due to their own connections in life, fail to look for anything more. When doctors tell them that medication is the best and only way to treat their symptoms, they take it without asking any questions, and that's the end of the story. When the media tells them to be afraid of the pandemic, they comply, and fear reigns supreme. With this existing paradigm and so many entrenched in it, do we have any hope of truly liberating ourselves en masse? More to the point, are we truly ready for such a change? In 2020, humanity collectively learned a lesson about the nature of quarantine, separating and isolating ourselves from each other for long periods of time. However, the lessons of quarantine go deeper than our physical lives, for we also saw and learned about the layers of quarantine within ourselves between our egos and our souls, and explored just how much ability we give ourselves to ask questions and go deeper or just accept things at a surface level. This is the reason we are discussing paradigms, because there are many paradigms out there. People asking questions and people who aren't, people who are listening to more than one source of information, learning and growing, and others who just like to talk, but ultimately take no action in their lives. We may liken it to the biblical parable of the sower and the seed, which says that there are those who hear the divine word of God and those who don't. And even in those who hear it, sounds good at first, but unless the wisdom is nurtured, the seed dies, and they quickly go back to their suffering and their life without spirit. So we can see then these paradigms go beyond belief systems. They enter into and emerge from the realm of action. The invisible world and the visible world are deeply intertwined. Earlier on, we explored what might happen if humanity inherited advanced, nearly alien technology, and what would happen if we suddenly had limitless power and the freedom to travel the universe. While, of course, it's easy to rebel against, say, NASA, who may or may not be withholding the truth at their highest level, it makes no difference if we're not able to look at our own behavior too and see if we have earned such a gift. Historically, human history is filled with colonization, subjugation, domination, and the enslavement of others, human, animal, and all of nature. There is no question that today, undue prejudice like racism and sexism exists even within the structures of society, and one that often goes undiscussed but is just as significant as speciesism. You may be fascinated to watch the Speciesism documentary made by a young man who attempted to prove that animal farming wasn't really all that bad, but ended up discovering that while we all believe the Holocaust ended over 70 years ago, the truth is there is still a Holocaust going on today, and it's found in the concentration camps that we keep animals in. Chickens, cows, pigs, even fish, all of them are subjugated against their will, dominated, terrorized, and killed en masse in order to feed our growing consumption-focused population. Of course, the moment this conversation emerges, watch as some people with certain paradigms of belief will instantly rail against it, for it is assumed immediately that this message is simply some sort of political or pretentious advocacy for veganism. And while for this reason many turn to veganism, ask any Native American only a few hundred years ago who rode across the plains in groups hunting buffalo, and you will find that there are natural ways of hunting that encourage freedom for ourselves and complete respect for nature. In the paradigm of those native people, they were a part of the spirit of the land as much as the animals were. They shared space with nature, and as such, their paradigm of belief guided their actions into ways of being that were natural, sacred, and pure. Even with the technology of their time, they understood better their impact on the world around them with more clarity than many can in this later era. Today, at the time of this video's creation, modern animal farming is responsible for a tremendous body of disease and suffering, and the beliefs at the heart of the industry are that humans have the right to subjugate other species because we're bigger, smarter, and more capable. These beliefs are so deeply rooted in the collective unconscious that to shift these ideas en masse, it may take something big to uproot the paradigm. Even if we take a more biblical approach and observe that in Genesis, God gave humans dominion over the earth and its inhabitants, are we not still responsible to govern this world with grace, respect, and honor? We are the earth's keepers, not captors. But times have changed, and the technology of but a few hundred years ago has been quickly replaced by far superior tech. And what would happen if tomorrow we suddenly gained access to the power that we discussed, limitless energy, free to travel the universe as we desired? With the existing paradigm of collective consciousness, it may turn out the exact same way as any Iron Man movie or Avengers or superhero film. What happens when the villain gets the arc reactor or the Infinity Stones? It's nearly the same thing that misguided humans have done to each other and animals for millennia. They take what they want and care not of the consequences. And what would stop humanity from doing the same today? If our deeper rooted speciesism is not addressed, then what happens when humanity encounters an alien species we've never before seen? Unless they are supremely advanced and can destroy us with the flick of a wrist but choose not to, which would be very humbling, what's to stop us from imposing our will upon them? In some ways, this question is a real representation of our world today. The pace at which technology has advanced and changed our lives may have outpaced our ability to evolve the wisdom appropriate for such power. Teenage girls' mental health is at an all-time low thanks to social media. Any resource-hungry company that can manage it monitors and invades our privacy. We have gained the ability to heat the earth, demolish rainforests, and shape the land, perhaps more quickly than we can learn what the consequences of such power may be. Materially, we may be advanced, but spiritually, we have a lot of catching up to do. Speaking to this emerging paradigm in some schools of geology, archaeology, and natural sciences, a new epoch of geological time has been proposed. As you may have seen in Sumerian epics, the Pleistocene was followed by the Holocene, beginning around 11,650 years ago before today, which is the current period we are in now. However, increasing numbers of voices have argued that humanity's impact on the environment and our ability to alter the ecosystem of our world calls for us to be in a new epoch. This is known as the Anthropocene debate and argues that the natural world has become so affected by humans that it warrants a redefinition of our place in time. As of July 2020, the International Union of Geological Sciences hasn't officially approved the term, but various start dates have been proposed for when this new paradigm of existence began, ranging from the beginning of the agricultural revolution all the way to 1945, when the fallout from the first atomic bomb altered the environment on a massive scale. Even Dr. Stephen Greer describes that many of the extraterrestrial species aren't concerned with violence at all, but rather are genuinely concerned with our attachment to violence as a species. It's not hard to envision this future where humanity has spread itself throughout the galaxy, just like in Star Wars, subjugating and controlling populations, trade, resources, and whole worlds, all in the pursuit of profit, where Emperor Palpatine represents the darkest, vile, and most greedy parts of that which is within us, and where Luke and the Jedi, then, are a reflection of our hopes, purity, and dreams in our hearts. But is this a reality that we want to create? One where we spread throughout the galaxy, subjugating those who are less further along on their evolutionary path? Perhaps the ultimate conspiracy, then, for this great conspiracy theory of everything, is this question. Could it be possible that all of this subjugation that we have today, the theories of human mental and emotional enslavement, while awful and terrible, is a necessary evil in order to collectively teach humanity who we truly are, and prevent us from leaving this world until we can do so responsibly? It's a strange thought, flipping the conspiracies on their head, where the Illuminati, whoever they are, could at the highest level, higher still than the elite with their pedophile rings, which are still a part of the Matrix, of course, be simply watching people experiencing their own darkness, making sure that we do not gain access to wield power we are not ready for. After all, the word Illuminati essentially means enlightened ones. But then again, even this is just another paradigm of belief, and in this game of life you choose your own paradigm. We're not suggesting this is true either way, but it is something to be mindful of, as there are a great many paradoxes in existence, and we must be free to explore all of them and where they lead us. A spiritual solution. And here at last we come to the heart of our conspiracy theory of everything. And this states that alongside technological progress to give us our material wealth, we must develop spiritual technology within our own bodies, which will aid us in navigating our ever changing physical world. Only then may we truly ever advance to the next stage. Our liberation and transcendence truly happen through revelation. The word itself actually stems from the meaning disclosure of information to man by a divine or supernatural agency, as well as unveiling or uncovering of sorts. As we've seen so far, humanity is undergoing an exponential increase in veils being lifted, and we are seeing life being stirred up and changed like never before. One analogy we might use here is, as if humanity has been in the dark for so long, isolated by socioeconomic and cultural divides, and yet with modern technology, it would seem as though the lights are collectively turning on. But now there is so much light all at once that it is blinding, and despite our access to so much information today, we are still just as blind as we ever were. That is, while we allow time for our eyes to adjust. Yet the root of revelation doesn't just speak to veils lifted, but our own revelation from divine origin. Belief systems and ideologies are challenged en masse as new information comes out that asks us to reassess our paradigms of identity. As this happens, those who are willing to explore new ideas grow, and those who rail against anything new only burrow deeper into their own existing paradigm. Even in the new world we are creating, there are bound to be different paradigms that people live within. We must remember that some people are filled with hate, negativity, and suffering, all of which are descending from their own pain, which inhibits their higher consciousness and keeps them rooted in a lower vibration. This does not mean that they are bad people, for the only true remedy is compassion. No matter how far disconnected from their soul someone may be, they can always come back to the light. However, the only way for this to take place is if they genuinely want to, for unless someone seeks their own salvation, they will never end up finding it. Thus, it doesn't matter if someone spends their time living in a VR reality for years, abuses their bodies, or even in some future reality travels throughout the universe. All paths through life can be taken, but only one path leads to the liberation of the soul. This is the path within. May this be a lesson for all of us too, for if we are afraid of the darkness within us and others, and we attempt to quell it by attacking it with anger and hate, then we lessen our own vibration and reduce ourselves to the same state of consciousness as that which we are fighting against. Evil begets evil, and in the words of a wise Jedi Master, fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. Hence, the true solution to the salvation of humanity, or the reconnection of our souls as we discussed so long ago, is through genuine and authentic compassion, by elevating our own consciousness to such a degree that our light radiates to those around us and we become instruments of sacred transformative change by the goodness that we embody. And while this may sound to some like spiritual woo, the discoveries around this today have the power to radically change everything we think we know about both science and religion. These discoveries speak to a deeper, basic, and more intrinsic understanding about the nature of who we are and our place in the cosmos, as well as the abilities that we have and may inherit. Speaking to the nature of consciousness itself, these discoveries are so paradigm-shattering that life on Earth as we know it will never be the same once the knowledge becomes commonplace among the people of the Earth, that is, if it's ever allowed to get there. For a long time, our perception of spirituality has been governed by the religions of the world, and our perception of the universe and the nature of life has been governed by science. Movies like Zeitgeist outline and identify ways in which the religious institutions have monopolized people in a myriad of ways, while others today, such as Dr. Rupert Sheldrake's The Science Delusion, demonstrate how science has been used to shepherd people into a mindset, keeping us locked into a paradigm of physicality and nothing more. Further, these two voices of science and religion have been at odds for a very long time, sharply criticizing one another or otherwise outright refusing to acknowledge each different perspective or their many merits and wisdoms that they bring forth. Despite this, today new revelations about the nature of consciousness stand to shatter the illusion of separateness destroy the dogma we've clung to for so long, and give us a foundational blueprint to create a new world for ourselves. Truly, it's how we can create heaven on earth. All that's required is our complete participation. One example of this is found in the work of Dr. Bruce Lipton with The Biology of Belief, which explains with profound scientific logic that our beliefs and self identity are a product of our environment, and that, as we think, it so shall we become. His work describes that if we spend our lives believing my family had a hereditary disease, so I'll get it too, you are consciously and subconsciously programming your body with signals that will facilitate you creating that outcome. And of course, this belief and others can come from our parents and family or the environments that we expose ourselves to. When we look at all of our childhood programming together, we find today a mashup of countless different media programs and entertainment, news stories, passed down rhetoric, and ideas that we receive from friends and others around us. Who we are today was shaped by the world, and while many of the lessons that we received growing up were good and valid, many others were simply long held beliefs that have been passed down for generations yet may not hold our highest interest at heart. These beliefs shaped our perspective of the world and, in that, how we behave and act, which leads us to create our destinies. As it would seem, many of the belief systems we hold on to disempower ourselves from being able to live our lives to the fullest. Further, many of the largest industries today are built upon previous paradigms, and so their continued growth means the limiting of this new understanding. For example, we return here to the pharmaceutical industry. If you help someone cure their depression, it's very difficult to justify charging them thousands of dollars a year for a prescription. It is far easier and much more lucrative that their depression or illness will be with them for a very long time. We must understand that the environment has played a very significant role in the creation of our collective reality, even from the moment that we were conceived and all of the experience that we've had since birth. And while birth defects do exist, Bruce's research says that 95% of people have perfectly fine DNA and can change how their genes are expressing themselves if they will it so. For some, this may be easier than it is for others, but it's very empowering research nonetheless. If we can change the signals our bodies are receiving, the thoughts and feelings we tell ourselves and receive from others, the places we live, the music we listen to, the food that we eat, the entertainment we watch, all of these aspects will play a role in reshaping our lives by influencing us from surface to very deep levels. As Bruce's work suggests, it doesn't matter what ails you. If you can address the root cause and provide yourself with a stimulus of a higher vibration, there is nothing that you cannot heal. To add even more weight to the conversation of science and spirituality finding union, as we go back in time to explore the practices of our ancient world, we find the roots of spirituality steeped in mysticism. To many cultures, such as the ancient Egyptians, Greeks, Indians, Native American shamans, and other aboriginal tribes, we find a great body of wisdom concerned with mystical and altered states of consciousness, as well as the use of psychedelic plant medicine. Today, and thanks to some amazing scientific pioneers such as Dr. Rick Strassman, and even the darker experiments we've explored already concerning psychedelics, these substances are powerful tools that can be used in a myriad of ways. The stories of the Montauk experiments say that people in the labs had their psychic abilities enhanced to the point where they could materialize objects out of thin air, but at the cost of their emotional and mental stability. This further alludes to the theories put forth by psychedelic scientists who discuss and theorize that there may be other dimensions or realms of existence that seem to exist all around us, which psychedelics give us access to, not just to visualize but interact with, which enhance our own psychic abilities. It is herein we find a powerful surge of revelation that pours through concerning science and religion, for it is not entirely uncommon for a number of beings to visit you during your journeys, including meeting ascended masters such as Thoth, Jesus, or Buddha, magical beings such as elves or dragons, or even aliens of a wide variety of kinds. It's almost as if to suggest that while material science is focused on understanding the workings of the third dimension, religions of the world have more focus around interacting with these higher realms and the beings who inhabit them. Psychedelics, then, while not the only method of communication and interaction with higher dimensions, do seem to be a potent tool for bridging our consciousness with higher worlds and connecting the gap between the material and the immaterial. And this is only one of several uses of psychedelics. For just as much as they may expand our sensory awareness outside of us into other planes of existence, so too do they expand our awareness inside of us, bringing to light and visualizing the subconscious and unconscious aspects of ourselves, which may be used in shifting and restructuring our inner frame of being. As the Institute of Noetic Sciences is proving today, along with what was put forth by Dr. Bruce Lipton, our consciousness and intentions steer our reality, steer our focus, and therefore our actions. As it relates to sacred ceremonies, treating it as a holy and sacred experience would yield entirely different experiences than treating it as a party drug. And so while deep healing can happen with plant medicine, that doesn't mean that it will happen, and ultimately it comes down to you. Today, a remarkable number of testimonials have been shared from those who have participated in these plant medicine ceremonies, especially when under the care of a true shaman. These kinds of ceremonies provide a sacred space for purging darkness, revealing profound truth, finding healing and forgiveness, and the merging of the soul. But it's not just ayahuasca, for even psilocybin mushrooms are showing tremendous success rates in clinical trials for helping people cure their depression, anxiety, or addiction to smoking, drinking, and other substance abuses, far above any other conventional methods for treating the same things. This is something that we must learn to take seriously, but we also must approach it with caution. Just as much as there are genuine shamans and amazing, pure-hearted healing centers, there are also plant medicine charlatans who will attempt to use these vulnerable states that the psychedelic state facilitates and use them for malicious or self-centered purposes. This can happen when the intention of the space or the shaman are not fully in alignment with the soul, nor in authenticity or integrity. Setting, and substance are all important when it comes to plant medicine healing, and often just doing something local in a city with untrained shamans or just going with the cheapest option available can do more damage than good. Someone who might truly benefit from a ceremony could all the same have a psychotic breakdown if they have too much in an improper environment or with shamans who are unfit to deal with the depth of psychic energy that is released in the ceremony. And to that end, this very well may be one of the aspects of psychedelics that we as a species will have to grapple with, for their return to our lives in a meaningful way, just as the ancient mystics practiced so long ago, comes with the revelation of a deeper psychic connection with one another. This notion alone may bring with it a great deal of chaos as we come to recognize that our thoughts and feelings are not isolated within us, but extend beyond us in a field and connect with others in an intimate way. This awareness will ultimately bring us together, but the fear of it will also drive many to violently oppose it and deny its existence. One ancient piece of wisdom that may further add weight to this notion is that change is a universal constant, yet our society and collective egos are often built upon a long-lasting sense of permanence. We often avoid change if we can, and this leads to holding on to things for longer than we ought to, which, of course, creates more suffering in the process. For those who embrace these mystical states, who explore the nature of higher realms, whether through plant medicine, meditation, lucid dreaming, or through other spiritual practices, a new paradigm begins to emerge. And in this world, true transcendence becomes possible, and the changes that are coming over the following decades will be much easier than they may be otherwise. This has to be a personal choice for each of us, as many will choose to fight for the old paradigm, and the transition to the new may be even more chaotic and uncomfortable for those who do. And just as the scientific paradigms go through profound changes, revealing an even more connected understanding of reality, so too will the world's religions be forced to transform. If people en masse begin experiencing the ascended master avatars together in these higher worlds, then religious separation must fall away, as the many dogmas of the world too break down, revealing a much more universal truth. True unity consciousness and the demiurgic state of being can no longer survive within our bodies and minds. We discover that we truly are made in the image of the Creator, meaning that the spiritual essence, call it God, Source, Spirit, or even Sophia if you prefer, is a creative essence, and this same power moves through us too.